Book 17 of 2019 was Lord of the Flies by William Goulding. I wanted to read this book for a while because someone had said that it was like Lost, the TV show, or the TV show had got influences from it. And I can see why they said that, because there's, you know, wild pigs running about in the jungle of a tropical island, and it's kind of like, you know, people are stranded on an island and they're trying to self-govern and decide what to do, and then there's this beast that they can hear in the forest that's kind of scary to them. So it's, you know, Lost basically ripped those things off from William Goulding's Lord of the Flies. It was interesting to read this because I liked the way that Goulding used children. I think if he'd have like done the same story with adults, it wouldn't have had the same kind of impact. Essentially what happens is the children go a bit savage and they start kind of like fighting each other, and a couple of the children actually get murdered by the other children. And the way that Goulding kind of like talks about it, well, not talks about it, but like portrays it as the plot, it's almost like you're reading it and you don't even expect it, and then all of a sudden one of them's dead and you're like, how did that happen? And I had to like go back and reread a paragraph because I was like, did someone just die? Like, how, like, it just said dead body, and I was like, what? They've actually died. And it's like the children just don't even respond to it, like they don't even care, like they've literally just killed someone and they're not even bothered. It's like almost as if William Goulding is trying to suggest that when you're in a society and you have social norms and you have certain kind of ways that you have to like behave, that they almost keep our carnal nature in check. So like our animalistic kind of urges are kind of contained so that we become more moral and socially acceptable, which is a philosophy in itself, isn't it? To believe that about people. But it kind of throws into question, like, who are you when you're not constrained by society? Like, you know, we don't murder people because we'd get like in jail and whatever. Like, I doubt that everybody isn't murdering someone because they think it's not the right thing to do. Like, if those laws weren't in place, you'd probably find that there would be more people that would kill people. You know, if you think of, you know, days gone by, like the murder rate was a lot higher than what it is now. Like, we've become more peaceful and kind of pacifying. I'm really struggling with words today. You know, we're kind of a little bit more of a peaceful kind of nature. There's, you know, some theory where as time goes on we become more peaceful and more like nice to each other or whatever. But William Goulding's kind of suggesting that actually, like, deep down, like, we're not like that. And the children, you know, initially they start off like sitting down, like having like discussions about what they're going to do. They think that they should set the fire going so that the smoke attracts like ships that go by. And then another group of children are wanting to hunt and to go into the jungle and hunt the pigs and get meat and stuff. So it's almost like they went straight into carnal nature straight away. Whereas, you know, there's a couple of the boys who actually want to get rescued. They're still clinging on to that kind of view of their lives of, this is temporary and, you know, I'm going to get rescued. Whereas the other group are kind of quite happy to stay there forever and to kind of like, you know, they're not thinking of in the future, they're thinking of right now, which again is another kind of like savage way of looking at life, to just think of here and now and not to think of the long game. You know, we've developed as a society and as a human race to kind of have foresight of what's going to happen in the future, to work more towards long-term goals rather than just what's immediately in front of us. So that was an interesting kind of juxtaposition between those two groups of boys. It's interesting as well that they're all boys. Like, it's almost, I guess it's in the 50s, and a little bit of sexism there, that men are the ones that would be carnal. Maybe if William Goulding had put females in there and they'd have behaved in a similar way, that would have been a bit disjointed and not as received as well, because women were seen then as the fairer sex and couldn't possibly, you know, turn into a savage in that kind of same way. You know, women tend to get represented as just objects to have sex with in terms of savage. If you think of Brave New World, with Linda, she's just like just a woman that has sex all the time. So that's interesting. So I thought it was kind of interesting that William Goulding kind of makes us think of what are we when we haven't got society around us, and to be held like accountable for our actions, like what would we actually be like. And as well, like, it kind of makes you worry about kind of groupthink and how you might have someone who's quite autocratic and quite like in charge, who's kind of like not a good person and not a value driven person, but yet everybody else will listen to that person and go along with it. And you see this a lot in groups. There'll always be someone at the head of it who's quite tyrannical and quite you know, not a nice person, but because they've got a following of other people, they think that they're justifying their own behaviour, and so they will, you know, ostracize certain people outside of the group and put all their attention towards that person in a negative kind of way. So if you ever find yourself on the edge of the group, then you're hunted down, very much as Ralph was in the book. So I found that very, very interesting, you know, like how people can do immoral things because they think it's part of the group and they think that it's okay because other people in the group are doing it, that it's okay to do. And you see this a lot with groups of people. People don't think for themselves very much anymore. They go along with what everyone else is doing because someone else has done it and that makes it okay, but it's not okay. And at the end, what I found really, really like interesting was Ralph is like running for his life. They're going to kill him, they're going to spear him, murder him. And I don't want to spoil it, but out of nowhere there's someone there, and it kind of describes like their the sailor's uniform, because there's a boat, they've come to rescue them, and they just stop and they just all start crying and they're like, oh my god, like what have we just been doing, almost. And it was kind of like a loss of innocence of like, we all at some point in our lives realise what we actually are as a human being, and that we're not that great and that we're not that nice, and that actually human beings are not virtuous, and although we might, you know, try to work towards our values, that our carnal nature is we're animals at the end of the day, and we can be quite vicious and horrible beings, but we choose not to be. So I thought that was kind of, you know, really interesting. It's not an amazing book in the sense of it's like it's a children's story almost. It's not even like it's a story for adults. The plot hasn't got a lot in it. It was published in the 1950s, so I think in those days we had less expectation from our plots in terms of, like, now we kind of want a little bit more depth, a little bit more characterisation, a little bit more hinting at life and lessons and stuff like that, whereas back then I think it was okay just to have a story. Like William Goulding, this is not to discredit him because he's a really good writer. Like I wasn't reading it going, oh, this is really rubbish. Like, he is a really good writer, and I found it quite quick to read because he writes quite well. And I think in the 50s it probably was quite novel to talk about like tropical island stuff, because not many people would have experienced that and gone there. But then having said that, like, I've been to like tropical places and they are amazing, and I don't think that Goulding's description really does them justice. I think he could have been a little bit more descriptive in that, but I think given that it's from the viewpoint of children, it probably wouldn't be that descriptive anyway, so he's probably done it quite well in that sense. So it's interesting because it makes you think about human beings and what they're capable of, and the fact that it's through children as well. Like, you think of like children as being innocent and they wouldn't behave like that, but these innocent children have just murdered another child. And if you think of like child murderers and stuff like that, like, I think the only reason why as children you don't have more child murderers is because of society and the fact that we say that that's bad and you shouldn't do that and things like that. If you just left children to their own devices, they probably would kill more people. So yeah, I thought it was interesting for that. It kind of makes you rethink humanity a little bit if you didn't already think about it. Obviously I think about this stuff all the time, so for me it was a little bit like I'd already thought about stuff like this, but it was a nice reminder of stuff. So if you've never really like thought about it like that, then maybe you should read it and it'll give you another insight into human nature.